Have you ever met someone who felt oddly familiar, like a memory you never made, yet your soul instantly recognized them? What if I told you that wasn't coincidence, but divine orchestration? That long before your mind could comprehend it, your soul was already being guided, quietly, mysteriously, toward the one you were meant to meet? You were not supposed to be there. The place, the time, the entire setting felt like an accident. You almost didn't go. Maybe your plans changed last minute. You felt a strange urge to take a walk, to step into a bookstore, to answer a message you normally would have ignored, and then something, or rather someone, crossed your path. It was subtle at first. There wasn't an explosion of realization, no divine announcement, just a sense, a shift, a ripple in your otherwise normal moment. What you didn't know was that God had been orchestrating that moment far beyond your awareness. What looks like chance to the conscious mind is often a deeply meaningful event guided by something greater than logic. This is not luck. It is not fate in the romanticized sense. It is synchronicity, the meaningful alignment of inner states and external events. God speaks to us in this language, not through loud commands, but through soft nudges and mysterious alignments. You may call it intuition or gut feeling, but it is the voice of the soul responding to a situation that your mind has not yet caught up with. This is how you begin to sense the presence of someone important before your thoughts can make sense of it. There is a deep intelligence beneath what we perceive as random. Most of the time you move through life focused on goals, expectations, and routines, but every so often you are nudged off course. Something delays you, redirects you, frustrates you, and you think, why now? Why this? What you may not realize is that these delays are not accidents. They are divine edits to your timeline, precise recalibrations that place you in the right space for a meeting that is spiritually appointed. You may not be spiritually conscious of what is unfolding in the moment. In fact, it often feels ordinary. Perhaps you exchanged a few words with someone. Perhaps your eyes met with a stranger, and there was something unexplainable, a familiarity that had no past, but carried the weight of ancient memory. These experiences are not meant to make sense immediately. In truth, they are too sacred to be rushed into language. You only realize later that something shifted in you from that point on. The mind may not acknowledge the importance of this meeting, but the soul reacts. You find yourself thinking about them without reason. Their presence feels magnetized to yours, not by desire, but by recognition. The divine connection doesn't always come with butterflies or sparks. Sometimes it comes with a strange stillness, an uncanny sense of déjà vu. You wonder if you've met them before, but what you are experiencing is not a memory of the past. It is a resonance between souls that have already known each other in the unseen, now manifesting in form. This connection is not forced, it flows. Or even if it begins with friction, it carries a sense of inevitability. Something within you cannot ignore it. That's the divine imprint. It's as if God planted something deep in both of you, and now it begins to bloom, quietly, without spectacle. The recognition is spiritual, not logical, and that is why many people miss it. They look for compatibility, timing, perfection, but the divine does not operate on checklists or dating profiles. It speaks to the soul in a language that transcends reason. What makes this process even more mysterious is that it usually doesn't come when you're actively searching. In fact, it often happens when you've surrendered, when you've stopped trying to control every detail of your romantic future. There is a space that opens up inside when you release the pressure of finding someone, when you start listening more to your own needs, your healing, your alignment. That's when the divine moves, not when you are busy chasing love, but when you are becoming love. This is not to say that effort is meaningless, but effort without spiritual timing becomes force. When God introduces your soulmate, there is very little pushing involved. You don't need to pretend, perform, or perfect yourself to be seen. You are met where you are. You are recognized as you are. The meeting may not lead to instant romance. It may take months, even years to unfold. But the seed is planted in that moment of divine intersect, and once it is planted, nothing can unwrite it. Not time, not fear, not even separation. Your soulmate's arrival in your life may come clothed in normalcy, but it is rooted in divine timing. It doesn't obey your clock. It obeys your soul's readiness, and God knows when that readiness occurs better than you do. That's why the meeting often feels like an accident. It bypasses your rational mind and introduces you to someone your soul already knows, but your ego has yet to understand. So when you look back at that chance encounter, that job interview you almost didn't take, that friend's invitation you nearly declined, that random decision to go somewhere new, realize that you were not the one planning it. You were being guided. And though you didn't realize it, that moment marked the beginning of a story your soul had been waiting to live. You weren't late. You weren't early. You were exactly on time for a meeting that only the divine could arrange. There is a moment, sometimes quiet and unnoticed, when you meet someone and something deep within you stirs. It is not always pleasant. In fact, it can be confusing, intense, even uncomfortable. You may feel unusually drawn to this person, yet you can't explain why. There's a familiarity in their presence, but also a tension, as though they are both calling something forward from you and exposing something hidden within you. You may not recognize it at first, but this is often how God introduces your soulmate, through someone who acts as a mirror to your soul. You've been taught to believe that love should feel easy, smooth, and validating, but true connection, the kind divinely arranged, rarely begins that way. Your soulmate is not a fantasy come to rescue you from your loneliness. They are a reflection not of who you pretend to be, but of who you truly are. That includes the beauty and the brokenness, the light you shine and the shadow you hide. And when someone reflects that back to you, it can feel disorienting, not because it's wrong, but because it's real. This kind of person doesn't just flatter you, they confront you. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but simply by being who they are. Their existence disrupts your patterns. They trigger parts of you thought you had buried or healed. Old wounds resurface, deep insecurities emerge, and while part of you wants to draw closer, another part wants to run. This internal conflict is not a sign that the person is wrong for you. It is a sign that they are showing you something about yourself that you've long refused to see. When God introduces your soulmate, He often does it in such a way that your ego can't maintain control. The connection unsettles the carefully built walls around your heart. Suddenly, the masks you wear don't seem to work with them. You try to present yourself a certain way, but it feels unnatural. You begin to feel exposed, not in a vulnerable way that invites shame, but in a way that demands truth. This person doesn't let you hide. Not because they demand you to be open, but because their presence makes hiding impossible. There is an unseen intelligence in this dynamic. What feels like tension is often transformation. You may think you're being challenged by them, but in reality, you are being challenged through them. Your soulmate doesn't come just to love you as you are. They come to awaken you, to draw you into your wholeness. And that awakening isn't always beautiful in the beginning. Sometimes it is painful. Because before you can unite with someone deeply, you must meet yourself deeply. You must witness the parts of you that you've avoided in other relationships, the ones you tried to numb, deny, or project onto others. This person becomes the catalyst, not the cause, but the key. Their soul resonates with yours in a way that stirs everything that has been dormant. Sometimes you will project your fears onto them. You may accuse them of being too distant, too intense, too confusing. But what you are really responding to is your own inner turbulence. The chaos is not in them. It's in you, and they've simply brought it to the surface. That's the divine design, because only what rises can be healed. And it's important to understand that your soulmate is not here to fix you, nor are you here to fix them. The healing happens not by solving each other, but by seeing each other clearly. In their presence, you are invited to let go of performance and perfection, to be raw, honest, and human. They do not demand your transformation. They simply hold space for it. Even when neither of you fully understands what is happening, there's a sacredness in that discomfort. It breaks the illusion that love should always feel easy. You will know this person not by how safe they make you feel in the beginning, but by how deeply they move you. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet resonance. You may try to push them away. You may question the timing. You may tell yourself that they're not what you imagined. But part of you will always return to them, not out of dependence, but out of recognition. Something in them calls out something in you, and you don't yet have language for it. That is how the soul speaks, without words, through feeling. This relationship may not look like others. You may not bond over surface-level interest or traditional compatibility. What draws you together is something unseen, a vibration, a knowing, and in that knowing you are asked to become more than what you've been, to grow not just with them, but because of them. They become both your challenge and your comfort, your mirror and your muse. And every time you look into their eyes, you're reminded, perhaps uncomfortably, that you are still unfolding. The divine does not introduce your soulmate to complete you. That is a misunderstanding. You are never incomplete. What God does is send someone who reflects the full spectrum of who you are, so that you may finally embrace all of it. Light and shadow, fear and faith, wound and wonder. And in this space of mutual reflection, true union becomes possible, not as an escape, but as a revelation. There comes a time in your life when everything begins to slow down, not in the world around you, but within you. The noise of ambition, the rush of relationships, the urgency to find love, all of it begins to fade into a quiet restlessness. You may not understand it, but you begin to feel distant from people, from routines, even from your old self. You look around and wonder where everyone went. Why are you suddenly alone? Why does life feel like it's closing doors instead of opening them? And in that solitude, confusion often sets in. But what feels like isolation is not punishment, it is preparation. This is one of the most overlooked yet sacred ways that God begins to introduce your soulmate. Not through a grand arrival or a dramatic entrance, but through the quiet unfolding of your own inner world. Before someone significant enters your life, especially someone destined to walk beside you at a soul level, you are first drawn into a season of becoming. And that season rarely feels exciting. It feels like loss, like waiting, like wandering. You may think you're being forgotten, but in truth, you're being formed. In this space, the divine removes the noise that once filled your heart. People who no longer resonate with your soul begin to fade away. Activities that once kept you busy no longer hold your interest. Even desires that once consumed your thoughts begin to lose their power. This detachment isn't accidental, it's spiritual. You are being gently pulled away from what is not aligned with your next chapter. And though it feels like life is taking things from you, it's actually clearing space. Space not just for another person, but for a deeper relationship with yourself, and ultimately with the one meant for you. The irony is that, in this waiting period, most people try to escape. They dive into distractions, relationships, goals, or habits just to fill the emptiness. But this emptiness is sacred. It is where clarity is born. It is where illusions dissolve. It is where you finally begin to see what is real, not just about others, but about yourself. The divine does not want to introduce your soulmate to the version of you that is still hiding behind masks or pain. That version is rooted in survival, not authenticity. Instead, you are invited to shed those layers, not through effort, but through surrender. There are moments when you begin to understand this, maybe not fully, but subtly. You start to feel more connected to your inner world. You pay attention to your intuition, to your dreams, to your feelings. You begin to notice the quiet wisdom in your sadness, in your loneliness. And while the outside world still demands answers and timelines, you begin to sense that what's happening inside you is far more significant than what's happening around you. This is the beginning of alignment, the invisible force that prepares you for divine connection. You're not being taught how to attract someone, you're being shown how to return to yourself. You're being softened in places that were hardened by disappointment. You're being emptied of expectations that were never yours to carry, and as you surrender to this process, your energy shifts. You stop searching for someone to save you, and instead, you begin to anchor into your own healing. You start to understand that love isn't about being found, it's about being ready. And readiness is not about perfection, it's about honesty. During this season, you may experience sudden moments of grief for things you never fully processed. Memories resurface, emotions arise. You may cry without knowing why. You may laugh at the simplicity of being alone and finally feeling free. This is healing. Not the glamorous kind, but the kind that cleans you from the inside out. It's not linear. Some days feel like breakthroughs, others feel like breakdowns. But through it all, something within you is becoming clear. You are being made whole, not so that someone else can complete you, but so that you can recognize someone who mirrors that wholeness. The divine timing of soulmates is not about a calendar date. It's about energetic readiness. Your soulmate is not just someone who walks into your life. They are someone your soul recognizes through alignment. And alignment happens when your frequency changes, when you stop settling, when you stop pretending, when you stop chasing and start allowing. God cannot give you what your energy is not ready to hold, and so you are made ready in solitude. You are refined in silence. You are prepared in the spaces where it feels like nothing is happening, when, in truth, everything is shifting. You might notice that during this time, certain patterns come to an end. Relationships that felt close suddenly dissolve. People you thought would stay forever quietly exit your life. Opportunities that once seemed exciting now feel meaningless. This is not rejection, it is redirection. The divine is not punishing you, it is protecting you from what could interfere with your preparation. Every loss is a realignment, every delay is a rearrangement, and while the ego mourns what is gone, the soul understands that something better is being made possible. There is a subtle yet powerful shift that occurs when your preparation nears completion. You no longer crave what you used to, You no longer seek validation in others. You stop chasing people because you have become your own anchor. You feel more at peace with the unknown, more present in your body, more connected to your intuition, and in that grounded state, you create space for something divine to enter, not out of need, but out of resonance. It's in this space, this sacred, settled, surrendered state, that God often introduces your soulmate, not as a reward for your suffering, but as a mirror to your transformation. You don't meet them with desperation. You meet them with recognition. You feel seen by them not because they fill your emptiness, but because they speak to the wholeness you've uncovered within yourself. You're not looking for them to complete you. You're looking to grow, to share, to walk alongside someone who carries a similar frequency of truth. And that is the divine mystery. The very solitude you tried to escape becomes the soil from which love grows. The waiting was not in vain. It was the preparation for a connection that doesn't just feel good, but one that is real, rooted, and ready. So, in the end, it's not in the thunderclap or the spotlight that God reveals your soulmate. It's in the stillness, the inner shifts, the silent exits and divine delays. Sometimes you meet them in what feels like coincidence, other times in confrontation, and often only after you've walked alone long enough to find your true self again. These are not accidents, they are alignments, timeless, intentional, sacred. You don't need to chase, control, or even fully understand. Just listen. Pay attention to the way your soul responds in quiet moments, the way peace enters unannounced, and how healing often precedes the arrival. When your spirit is ready, love will not rush or confuse you. It will recognize you, because the one meant for you isn't just coming, they're being sent, and your soul already knows the way.